Coming to the subject given to me, Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, everybody knows, is considered the greatest dramatist and writer as a whole in the entire, say, civilized world. There have been writers and writers, great ones also, in all languages. It may be Russian, French, German, Hindi, Sanskrit, so on and so forth. There are a number of languages in the world, and each language has its share of greatness in terms of its writers. However, because of the British Empire also, English is world language today. At least 46 countries in the world have English as official language. And all over the world, there are people who speak English, who write in English. And interestingly, in India alone, the people speaking English outnumber the people put together in Britain and America. I am not saying it. I am quoting an Englishman, an authority on English language. But Shakespeare remains the greatest writer known in any language. It is wonderful that he rose to become such a great writer. It is God's gift. He was not a PhD. He didn't have university education. He didn't have even college education. He had only school education. He belonged to a village, Stratford upon Avon, which is on the, Stratford is a village on the river bank of Avon. We say Ganga Kinare Wala. Yeah, he was Avon Kinare Wala. And interestingly, it's a matter of pride for all of us, for the Indians, that if you visit Stratford, the birthplace of Shakespeare, there are only two statues there. One, that of Shakespeare, and the other, that of Rabindranath Tagore. Only two statues, no third. So that is a great tribute to the Indian talent, Rabindranath Tagore. Anyway, Shakespeare had only school education, as I said, and came from a family which, to begin with, was very, very ordinary, but gradually rose. Fortunes had its play with Shakespeare's father. He rose to be in great position, but at the same time had bad days, evil days. To begin with, John Shakespeare, who was the father of William Shakespeare, was a farmer. He didn't own any land. There was one Arden who owned lands, and Shakespeare's father was only working as a farmer there. After the death of Arden, his daughter Mary Arden inherited 50 acres of land, which was a big chunk at that time. And she chose to marry Shakespeare's father, John Shakespeare. So Mary became mother of William Shakespeare and wife of John Shakespeare. And she brought in a dowry, let us say, in dowry, 50 acres of land. Of course, Shakespeare's father uh, could not be considered very wise. He rose to become the mayor of the place, but at the same time, he, you see, suffered many setbacks, both in terms of money and property, as well as reputation. At that time, money lending for interest was not permitted in the Elizabethan times. Shakespeare's father did it, and for that he was punished. Similarly, he did a few more things for which he had to suffer in prestige as well as monetarily. But his son, William Shakespeare, brought all the good that was possible to the family name. At Stratford, there was only high school where he studied. And during those days, there used to be touring groups of actors who will stage a play and the villagers will sit around and enjoy it. So one such company visited Shakespeare's village. Shakespeare got inspired and he joined that group and went with the group to London, where he became an actor himself. Now, it was not just fascination for acting that he joined it. There were compulsions of the family situation also. He must find a job to sustain himself and the family. He was born in 1564, married at the age of 18 in 82, and then he had three children, one son, Hamnet, and two daughters. Hamnet and one of the daughters were twins. Some writers on Shakespeare think that Hamlet, the play, is based on his own son who died young, which is just speculation. It has not much truth. Anyway, but that is how it goes. And he was compelled to do a job just after high school. He could not afford university education because university education means going to Cambridge or Oxford, going to London, and he had no money to support himself. So he joined this profession of acting and joined the Globe Theatre there. There, of course, he emerged as a writer. He wrote the plays which were staged, and 37 plays, comedies, tragedies, histories, romances, and one and all very great plays, admirable piece of work, each one of them, and wrote on histories, British history, Roman history, right from, you see, Julius Caesar, Coriolanus, Antony Cleopatra, all these. Similarly, these Richard the second, third, Henry's fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth, and so on. So many. So these 37 plays, each one of them is a class apart. And quotable lines. By the way, I also, among many, did a biography of Shakespeare, a new biography. Incidentally, this is just a drop in the ocean because there is a special library at Washington, D.C. called Folger's Library, which is on Shakespeare alone. When I visited it 10 years ago, it had 400,000 books on Shakespeare. 4 lakh, 400,000 books on Shakespeare. And every year, on the average, about 300 books are added to that library. So several thousand must have been added after that. Today, the tally would be much larger. Anyway, so that is a tribute to his talent. In all the world languages, he has been translated. All his plays have been translated. Sometimes, of course, translations can be very funny. Once I came upon the translation of Antony and Cleopatra in Hindi. Sorry. The title given was not Antony and Cleopatra, but Cleopatra alone. And you know what was she called in Hindi? Kali Nagan. So that was the title of the play, Kali Nagan, rather than Antony and Cleopatra. So there can be sometimes funny translations of Shakespeare, but the fact remains that there are translations. Shakespeare is available in all the world languages. And his greatness, of course, is his humanity. You can't see, label him as an Englishman or this and that, because he is a writer per se, as Rabindranath Tagore used to say, we write for mankind, which means writers' audience are the entire world population. Great writers do not write for a particular community or a particular segment of people. They write for all humans. And what is literature after all? Shakespeare shows it what literature is. Alexander Pope, one of the English poets, had said that literature holds mirror up to nature. And Dr. Samuel Johnson, who is considered the greatest authority on Shakespeare, greatest critic of Shakespeare, he says that Shakespeare holds mirror up to nature. In his plays, you can see entire humanity. You can see the best of characters. You can see the worst of characters, men and women, and in between, all kinds. The jocular, the serious, the saintly, the roguish, all types of humanity, male and female, are available in Shakespeare's plays. So he could imagine and create and make them live in his plays all the shades of human nature, because human nature is various, a large variety, unending, and he could conceive all that. That's remarkable. We can't think of any other writer who has such a large variety of uh, persons, male as well as female. And that reminds me, we speak of gender sensitivity today. We speak of feminism, so on and so forth. In Shakespeare, in that 16th century, when this issue was not there as it is today, you can find women characters, female characters who are dominant, who are shown superior to their male counterparts. Think of Portia in The Merchant of Venice. It is she who shows superiority of intellect, who beats Shylock at his own game, because Shylock was demanding pound of flesh. That was the contract. She intervened and says, yes, you can have pound of flesh. You can cut his heart. But then, mind it, you will not drop extra blood. Not even a single drop of blood will be shed extra. You can have the heart you like. Well, he was caught. So that shows the superiority of Portia. Similarly, in As You Like It, Rosalind, and so many more. Women characters in Shakespeare stand out, and they show mental superiority, cultural superiority, and so on. Think of 16th century. We are uh, fighting for the female, you see, position, equality, etc. today, but he could 400 years ago show that they are superior. You don't need to demand anything from them. They are. So there are all kinds. Anyway, so Shakespeare remains the topmost dramatist of the world even today. But then in his own time, you know, all these plays were staged. And the playwright has to be very clever, very subtle, very intelligent in presenting things. You know, he's writing, presenting stories of kings and princes and giving critique of their lives. So, yeah, you find in every play an implied critique of the characters in power and position. But he does it very cleverly. Otherwise, you know, the kings would have his head chopped off. So he would make a fool to say things. He would make a clown to offer critical comments so that he is not taken seriously. So there were ways devised by Shakespeare to offer critique of what was deserving of criticism. In histories, he does it. In tragedies, he does it. In comedies, he does it. And in The Tempest, for example, you find a critique of colonialism also. Although he belonged to a country which was a colonial power the world over, but there is an implied critique of colonialism, of how you treat other people. So Shakespeare, like a true artist and a great artist, had godlike vision where he could see all things and place them in their respective positions, giving due to each, to the rascal as well as to the saint. From the earliest of comedies to the latest of romances like The Tempest, you find such a large variety of characters, good, bad, and indifferent. No two characters are alike. That's a remarkable achievement. Sorry, that you could create hundreds of characters, each one having a distinct identity of his or her own. Of course, I don't say that he has been the only writer in the world. There have been others. Think of Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, in his very first novel, Pickwick Papers, there are over 450, to be precise, 456 characters in one single piece, one single literary work. And that was his first novel. He wrote so many. So great writers have been there besides Shakespeare also. But then he remains the greatest among the great also. And no wonder he is translated in different languages world over. And he is taught at different levels, from the school to the university. And a lot of research work is done the world over. I remember when I was at Cincinnati in America, there were a lot of teachers and students engaged in doing research, and most would not dare pick up Shakespeare for research. But then there were some who were fascinated, and they showed the courage to say something new. By the way, those days, that was early 70s, 1971 to 74, when I was doing my research as well as teaching the graduate students. Neil Armstrong, by the way, was also a colleague in the neighboring department. The first man on the moon, he belonged to a village close to the city of Cincinnati, and he was also one of the teachers. Although he didn't have master's degree, no PhD, no MA or MSc, but he was a professor, and he was given 3 times the salary of a professor, because he was the only one in the world who had been to the moon. So that distinction gave him that status. There were other universities in America which were offering him even more salary. He said, no, I would not leave Cincinnati. My village is close by. I have been a student here, and I would remain a teacher here. So look at the sentiment which is human and which is common to all. It has nothing to do with any particular nationality and so on. Well, uh, you can go on and on about Shakespeare. I think it is enough for the day. I would rather welcome if there are queries and questions so that there can be dialogue and we can discuss things. Thank you.